going
Hey,
on, senor? Yeah,
what's happening? How are you?
good to see you.
You
Well,
too, brother. You too.
yeah, man. So again, welcome to the Museum of Graffiti, our daily artist talk, where we chop it up and uh, talk to people like you who have, had such an impact, a historical impact on the culture, well, many cultures, let's just say, both art and design. So, Risk, before we start, usually read a little bit of the bio you guys supply me and stuff, and this is a quick bio, short bio, because you have a really tremendous history. Kelly Risk Graval, his prominence as the originator of a bright, colorful West Coast graffiti style, and he's pioneered hitting up heavens, which meant putting his graffiti as high as possible, scaling and writing on freeway signs and overpasses. These days, Risk spends his time creating bright neon pieces and colorful canvases painted with candy car paint and crushed abalone, or he's assembling massive sculptures. Risk art has been subject of museum exhibits, which he has been featured in the highly successful Beyond the Streets exhibit in LA and in New York. And you're a regular contributor with some of the world's top musicians, including doing commissions for Aerosmith and also hand painting concert outfits for Halsey. And of course, this was well known too, the cover you did for Blink 182's album Nine. And yeah, and you were, as it says here, one of the handful of artists worldwide who was invited to paint this at the Super Bowl in 2019. That's huge. I would suppose. But really, and when we talk about you and even just kind of emphasize huge, one of the things that I wanted to jump into the conversation with was these enormous color field paintings you do on buildings.
Yeah. Well, those are I call those my triple O series. So it's object oriented ontology, and it's where you kind of take something out of the norm and transition it. Like the whole piece becomes rather than doing a piece on a canvas or something like that, you're immersed in the piece, and we'll get into that a little more in depth. But that's what those are, and you're right. They're color fill paintings, huge color fill paintings, and that's a little graffiti drive, man. Like just want to go bigger and better, and just like I want to just paint the world kind of thing. That's where it started. But Ellsworth Kelly, one of my heroes. There's so many people, but like that's what those were. And it's just like total coverage.
Yeah, no one could have foreseen it in this way, because people like you mentioned, the color field painters, like even Frankenthaler was part of that camp, as was Rothko, and this idea of destructuring painting, especially when you're coming from your history as a writer where it was so constructed. Now you're taking those bars off, that framework off of it, and just basically, I don't even want to say wrapping. You're painting. You're actively painting.
Yeah.
These large buildings. So tell me about this. How'd you arrive to this? What were you aiming at in terms of, going into this giant color field painting?
So it's kind of crazy, man. So okay, so I started thinking about so I was doing the Olympics with Shepard and Ron English and Tristan Eaton. A couple of us were out there doing these big murals, and I got there, and they're like, "So what do you want to say, man?" I was like, I like to write Risk," and they all just kind of looked at me like, "Huh? Yeah, we love Risk, that's cool, but what do you want to say?" I'm like, "I don't want to say anything, man. I just want to write Risk." And he goes, "Cool. So what's your goal?" I said, "I like to evoke emotion with color." And they go, "Oh, cool." So Ron English is one talking. He's like, "You're a colorful painter." And he goes, That's fine. You don't have to say anything, whatever." So I looked into this stuff, and I was like, "Cool." So I said, "What makes me tick, man? Like, what really gets me going?" So I started thinking about, the best times of my life and most proud or the happiest, and like the freeway pieces, right? When I bombed the freeway, the next day going on the freeway and I see that piece and you just get chills, like, oh, fuck yeah. But then I thought about it, I was like, man, 80% of the people can't read the piece and they're going by at 80 miles an hour. So I was like, I wonder if I can evoke the same emotion without letters or characters. And that's how it started. And then I got super enthralled in colorful paintings and Ellsworth Kelly and people like that. And that's what it was to do a graffiti palette, evoke emotion. I wanted the same feeling you got driving down the freeway with just seeing the colors, and that's how it started. And that whole graffiti itch of like bigger and better and more happened, and the buildings got bigger and better. You know, that's it.
And one of the things that also changed in terms of your aesthetic in painting was the tools you use, because now you start using these very sophisticated uh, guns, right? These painting guns normally used for car painting.
Yeah. Well, we start, as uh, that autonomy painting is kind of like that, right? So we start thinking about how to do things with better machines and all this stuff. And when you start painting that big, you have to get so much volume out. So you start adapting the guns and machines, and it's a natural progression. You start using different materials and equipment.
So now that you do these murals, and I mean, are these common commissions that you get, or is this part of festivals? How do people approach you about you doing these works publicly?
Well, I think I'm a confusing artist, right? So I'm an artist and I'll never know completion. That's my whole goal. And I think people get confused, because some people hire me for murals, which is my outdoor mural stuff, and some people hire me for the festivals, and that's graffiti. And it's always different. But yeah, people just call me, and I look at the job and we put it on the calendar. If we can do it, we can do it. And sometimes we can't. And I'm blessed, fortunate, I get to pick and choose the good ones, and that's what we're doing.
You've done some amazing ones, and also you collaborate on. You've done some really nice collaborations. This one with your homie Retna, brother Retna out in LA. Also, again, one of those very blessed LA artists who, your generation really, that has been shifting how we perceive art in public space. And this was a really good combination right here, both with color and writing.
Yeah, it's a thing that, as an artist, you want to create dialogue and continue dialogue, and that's how we communicate. So, as other people might just sit there and just rap, we'd rather sit in the studio and paint together. And Rhett is in my crew, and he's one of my brothers, and all this stuff. And that's kind of how we communicate and how we push each other. And we get on the wall and like do this and do that, and mess with his stuff. He messes with my stuff. And I just always believe in that, man. I'm such a big fan of collaborations. Like, a lot of artists don't like that. And I can't wait to meet an artist and get in the room with them, Like, I have nothing to say to them. I have nothing to talk about. But get me on the wall with you, and we can dialogue,
Right. And, it's great, too, because there is this artistic dialogue that you create, and when you do collaborate, but also this public messaging dialogue. Like this painting that you did with Shepard Fairey, the Peace Justice mural. And it's a beautiful mural. I mean, again, it's painting and graphic design. It's a really great compliment. What was the story behind this painting, and where was this mural painted?
That's in Miami. It's, I think, the first or second one Shepard and I did together. We've done about 5 or 6. And it was just like, I wanted to do something with Shepard because he's a huge influence to me, and he's such a great human. And I want to do a mural with him. So I was like, let me do my colors and you do your thing on it. And it was like, that was it. So we just hung out for a week and did this, and it was super cool. We made a print of this actually too. It was really cool. I went back and bought all those prints back, and I'm still buying them back,
So now the good thing is that, again, you haven't abandoned, traditional style collaborations. You do these color field paintings. You go in hard with that. But they also, like, what I like too, especially in that combination with you and Shepard, it works seamless. It's a seamless collab. And
Yeah, because
I'm sorry, go ahead.
things are right. I'm sorry. When things are right, they just click, right? There's not a lot of thought. The best shit's without a lot of thought, and that's how it is with Shepard every time. It's just like sometimes, we got to the point now where I go there a week in advance, he comes a week after, and we don't even see each other sometimes. It's just, we just know what we're doing, but we get to talk about it otherwise. But yeah, it just works.
It's good to come off of that conversation about what that work is, especially where your profound evolution in painting at where it stands now. But like, I want to go back a little bit with you, and I've got this image of the Belmont Tunnel. And one of the things that I want to know about is when you started in your early days, what were you looking at? What was influencing you? Was it New York, or was it something that already existed in LA?
Nah, man, it was 100% New York. Like, I got a lot of brothers from New York, as you know, and I'm blessed. I came up at a really weird time because I was so tight with New York because that was my influence. There was nothing else here. We had Soon, who came from New York, who painted. He was better than all of us, but otherwise it was like New York and trains and stuff like that. And that was my lifelong dream, to go to New York and bomb trains. And it was 100% New York, but I had to put like the California twist on it because Krylon even made a series, California Colors, right? All the neons and shit, because that was California. So I just had to put that kind of twist on it. But all my letter forms and everything definitely derived from New York in the beginning.
Yeah. I guess we can see that in some of these early pictures. To the point, and that Risk 86 piece that we see, the dark true blue with the jungle green and I think yellow.
Yeah.
Is that are those neon colors? Those Krylon neon colors you were mentioning?
No, you nailed that. That's pineapple yellow, jungle green, true blue. That's basic. But I'm talking the neons came after that. Like I got me and Slick. We really got into the neon colors, but we would just kill the neons. He was such an amazing, like, no one could fuck with Slick with the characters. Like, he was so amazing. And he put that neon highlight on stuff, and people were like, oh, shit. And that was it. So I had to put the neon on.
Let me stop you on that for a second. Give me a little bit of history here. So who really pioneered that? It's debatable who was doing that first, obviously, but who was practicing that back in them days?
I'm gonna say Slick. I mean, that's the first I saw it. Man, it was Slick, and he came from Hawaii. And he had this airbrush background technique, and he applied it to graffiti, and he used those poppy airbrush colors. I know Doze was a huge influence on Slick and his characters, but Slick just took a different twist with that realistic kind of vibe.
Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting is if you think about that, the colorful nature of the graffiti, the pop. It's California, Southern California, man. It's Venice Beach. It's pop. It's loud. It's all that. And
Venice Beach, man.
Yeah, and we're looking at this. Do you remember this piece here in Venice Beach that you did? This Risk piece from, I believe, '89.
Okay, so I don't even know if this is the Venice Beach or the Beyond the Streets piece, because I duplicated.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good.
I don't know what this is, but I think this is Beyond the Streets. So we duplicated the pavilion because.
Oh, you did duplicate. Okay, yeah. Well, then tell me about the original. Tell me about Venice Beach and Venice Beach graffiti that was coming up during those periods.
Okay, well, you got to think Venice Beach was such a melting pot of cultures, right? You had bikers, you had gangsters, you had hip hop emerging, you had surfer skaters, you had everything there, right there at this pinnacle of a spot. And it was fucking crazy. And the locals were, pretty rough dudes. And it's hard for them to sit there and watch their spot get treated like a circus, right? So it was very aggressive. But it was like the show place. Like, you're on the ultimate platform when you paint Venice Beach. And Zephyr is the one actually did the big silver at Venice, and that was like one of the most legendary pieces in LA history. It stayed there forever. I think Brim and some of the TAT guys came down and did some pieces, really good pieces. I think it was Brim, maybe BG, or I don't know. I forget, but like they're really good pieces. But they didn't get a lot of shine because people didn't know about them, but we knew about it. We found those pieces and we loved those pieces. But Venice Beach became our playground, our show thing. But like out of that came punk rock, right? Suicidal Tendencies. And you had a mixture of cultures where now all of a sudden these white punk rock kids are doing graffiti. So it's not all hip hop, but these same punk rock kids are breakdancing on the boardwalk. So it's like, what's going on?
It's a hybrid culture.
Yeah. So Venice, I think the energy at Venice was so influential to California graffiti, LA graffiti, because all the characters weren't mean mug b-boys anymore. Now it's like skulls and flipped up hats and shit like that.
Tell me some of the prominent figures of that time in that area.
Oh man, some of the characters the guys doing characters like that was like a Rev from KSN, PJ, Grim. Some of those guys just did these incredible fucking characters, and they're a punk rock influence, Even PJ was like more hip hop, but he did some aggressive shit because he went to Fairfax High. He was in our crew and shit. So yeah, you just had a really mixture of man. There's so many after comes Dello and Cool Boy and all these dudes that came, the younger kids from these guys, and our characters were just a little different, man, just a little more aggressive. And yeah, it was just an LA thing, I think, but it was a mixture of cultures. It was happening. We were watching punk rock and hip hop combine, and that's.
So were you seeing that also pull communities closer, whether it was the South Side, whether it was the East Side? Did graffiti kind of pull you guys in closer, or was just stayed kind of just in your own?
100%, man. 100%, because like without K2S, there couldn't be WCA. That natural rivalry, the East Side dudes and the West Side dudes. This the white boys and the Mexicans. Like there had to be this rivalry, and there had to be this thing, but there had to be this mutual respect. And to be respected by dudes like this, you have to be able to get down. And it was just it was a beautiful thing, man. It was like a lot of energy and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But Prime and all those guys and Deffer, Deffer to this day, it was just so important to have a mixture of cultures. And you have to understand, you get subcultures and what hip hop was, and now we're breaking away from the hip hop culture. Not just hip hop culture, it's graffiti culture now. So now you have a graffiti culture, and it doesn't have to be hip hop. You have another common bond, and you come from different neighborhoods, different sides of the town. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I liked about LA, that it was diverse. It wasn't always about just hip hop. I think people have different lifestyles and grow up and live different lifestyles because it's such a big state. It's a really interesting state in that it's as diverse as it is, but it's just so spread out. Risk. And so you would eventually team up with MSK and Seventh Letter, and you have three crews that you're under. I mean, three. You mentioned LA Writing, and of course, those three crews are really come up as on the top, as well as K2S. You guys really pioneered, a lot of really phenomenal work out of LA in terms of painting, but again, conceptual work too. The kind of work. For instance, what I like about these pictures, one is actually you doing a graffiti piece on an actual city bus, and then the bottom picture is from Beyond the Streets, and it's an actual bus commissioned to be painted by you. It's an actual artwork. It's an actual giant sculpture painting, automobile, bus.
Yeah. So. You mentioned these crews, and I had no choice, man. Like WCA was my crew, and it spawned AWR and these other crews, and AWR spawned MSK and Seventh Letter. So when it got to that point, I was grandfathered into MSK. I wasn't the originator or anything like that at all. I was already just out doing whatever. And they're like, you better write it, like I got grandfathered in. And so I wrote it because those are my brothers, and they're my little brothers. And I love the story because there was a time where I got so disenchanted with graffiti, I just kind of turned away. And then they called me Risk Van Winkle. They're like, they used to come to the house all the time and show me photos. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Who did this? I'm like, those little fuckers did this? And they got me out there pushing again, and I pushed them. And so a full circle. Like, I think we're the only crew that I could think of that younger generation influenced the older generation, influenced the younger generation. It just goes full circle, So it's a pretty special thing.
I would say, because I got to interact with you guys at some point, through the last 20 years, and completely, you guys have remained a strong brotherhood. And I think that's one of the interesting themes in the culture that people, sometimes overlook is the brotherhood and the sisterhood that develops over so many years around art. But just to keep us moving forward, and you've done some big projects. This billboard, what I find really interesting about taking over billboards. Again, in the intro we talk about heavens, right? About getting up by any means necessary. Tell me a little bit about that. About when you started hitting up freeway signs and why.
Oh man, it was 80s. I don't remember, but I remember it started because I was jealous in New York. I was like, dude, these dudes go to a train yard and the trains go all over the city. I'm like, we're fucked. We don't have that. How do I do that? And I started thinking, I was like, man, the freeways. So I just got to do a lot more pieces, but I could do the same thing. So, these kids in New York making social commentaries to everyone at the rush hour catching the train. I'm like, okay, I can do the same thing, but I just got to hit all the freeways. So that's how I started, man. I just woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. I was like, the freeway. And I fucking ran and did the first freeway piece, right? And cool, and it got as much notoriety as I thought it would. People are tripping the fuck out on it. And then I kept hitting the freeways. And then that whole graffiti thing, bigger, better, more, right? So I was like, cool, what's up? So I started looking at the signs and lights and the heavens and shit. And we didn't call them heavens back then. We were just getting up bigger. So I did this freeway overpass. It was like a train overpass on the 110 freeway. That was the first one. And then it went to some other shit. But Whisk and Sir were the ones that like really created the heavens, because they're my crew and they're just like, they ran with that shit. I mean, we used to get up there and get high and do whatever we did. And, I did, the first ones. And then after that, they outnumbered me by hundreds. They killed those things. But it was just a thing we did. We just called it the heavens, man, because you're up there and you look at these lights. It's kind of like the heavens. We might have been a little high too. I don't know, but whatever.
High risk and high stakes for sure, right? So Risk, I kind of want to move a little forward, or actually, let's go back to the past. Really, I want to talk about your days at USC, and how did that prepare you for the artist you were to become?
Well, it's weird because my dad, rest in peace, was he's a colorful dude. He laundered some money. He did this, he did that. He had to move around. I moved around, I think, every year. I went to sometimes 2 schools in a year. And his big thing was, you're going to be educated, you're going to go to the best schools. So as we ran across from Lake Tahoe to Palos Verdes to Manhattan Beach to LA to Beverly Glen, like all this stuff, he moved according to the school district, and he was set on me graduating from USC business. And I got some scholarships to some art schools, and he made sure I didn't go. And I went to USC, and I was like, fuck this. I'm an art major. I switched my major, and then when I switched my major and he found out, he pulled the funding. He's like, fuck that. I'm not paying for you to be a fucking artist. And I got kicked out of USC. I did that piece right there. I did it on the roof of the building. I asked him if I could do it. And our teacher said yes, but I think he thought I was going to go up there with an easel and paint on the roof, but I meant paint on the roof. So the dean comes up and she was talking shit, and she said, "This is anarchy. It's done with spray paint." I was so offended. And this is when I was hanging out with Vulcan back in those days, and I didn't use the word graffiti. It was a bad word and all this stuff, negative connotation. And I told her to suck a bag of dicks, and I got kicked out of school. And then all my teachers rallied up, got me reinstated. I got a scholarship, and I graduated from USC, and they made this poster. And this poster actually went out to every high school in the United States. So
amazing.
It was one of those fucking just triumphs, like, yes. And USC was nothing but great to me. It was the most amazing experience of my life. And I was very lucky again because they didn't know what graffiti was. So the professors were like, oh shit, it's this thing, it's dynamic, it's great, it's gonna be famous, blah, blah. So they adjusted all the curriculum to me. So when people did fruit bowls, they let me do hanging cans with nooses and shit. And after that, a lot of graffiti artists went to USC, and that's when shit was getting tagged and bombed, and they're like, keep that shit out of here. So I had a different, unique experience because it was embraced when I went there, So, yeah.
Well, you were also at that time too, as we were talking earlier, you were thinking ahead, right? Because you were also entrepreneurial. You were one of the earlier streetwear brands to come out of LA with Third Rail. And I felt like we had to talk about this important history of yours. How did you go from writing and studying art to creating a clothing brand, a cut and sew brand, and also a print brand?
Well, actually, let's talk about USC a little bit. So at USC, I was already on TV and stuff doing INLA, and Slick and I had won the world championship, and we were on the TV and blah, blah, blah. So I had a little notoriety, and we were like, how do we parlay that, right? So Conart, Ash was sharing my studio with me, and he had a press in there. And I was like, dude, this Slick and I would make T-shirts and take them to Melrose and sell them for food or whatever we did. And I ran into this Japanese guy. He wanted to buy a bunch of stuff, and I kept telling Ash, you better go, bro. And he wouldn't go. I'm like, dude, if you don't go, I'm gonna start a clothing line. And I did. Slick and I did. And we had this mad beef with Ash from Con-Art, and it turned into this war. But yeah, it was an entrepreneurial thing. We did it. It was important. It started off, it was rebellious, became a business, and then became important. You know, it went from just getting lunch money to like, oh, wow, we can make a difference. We can be heard. We can, Slick and I were, I don't know if you guys saw some of the photos that they've been posting lately on the Seventh Letter, but it's some embarrassing shit. But that was us. We had a unique style. And we were like, all right, let's change up hip hop and style. Like hip hop had the baggy sweaters and stuff, but like, let's introduce the West Coast skateboarding baggy pants. Let's do this. Let's do that. So that's how it all started.
Right. And oddly enough, years later, you returned back to fashion. And what I like about this is, again, it's not so detached from your work. It's your prints on garments. So you're back in the fashion game. Tell us about this project.
So, Dante, he was in AOK, wrote Brisk. He was also a huge influence. He was part of Third Rail in the beginning too. But he was one I was like, hey man, let's make Third Rail clothing for graffiti artists that's not a fucking marker or a can or some bullshit that we wouldn't wear. So even that tag shirt you saw, the Third Rail shirt, was the first like vectorized computer graphic graffiti on clothing, right? And that mentality really struck me, like how like take something for the culture, twist it, make it cool, make it real, and don't worry about the dollar signs, and the dollar signs will come tenfold, and not whatever. So it's always been kind of a concept thing. Like in clothing, it was just like I always thought it was like something super cool, like to do. And I don't know if we could talk about this. So we're doing a clothing line. It's coming out, but like and I go back and forth with buying Third Rail back every. I lost the company 3 times and got it back, and I might get it back again. I don't know. But, we're doing some clothing, and I think to answer your question, it's just something in me that's like, it's almost like a hobby or something. Like I like to design shit, like, I don't know. It's just something that you feel like you have to do once you've done it for so long,
Right. And the thing is, graffiti is an applied art, right? And it's important to understand the power of having that skill set and that you could apply it to anything in life, and which you do. But, I have to remind folks that you are a committed studio painter as well. You've been committed to your studio work for many years now. And so let's explore some of that work. And, again, what we're looking at is an image of you in the studio painting, I guess a color field painting on canvas. Tell me about your studio practice. What goes on in that studio of yours?
Well, my studio, so I am a studio artist, and I've been a studio artist since day one. People don't know that. Like I created art since day one. I think Gandhi, I saw some Gandhi shit at a very early age somehow. And I was like, dude, I made these sculptures, whatever. But so as I evolved as an artist and as a studio artist, I realized that I love graffiti, but like I said earlier, I want to be an artist that never knows completion. I want to do so much other shit. I want to explore. At the elementary stage, it's airbrush and this and that, and then it gets into welding and neon and all this shit. And it's really the Ferris Gallery, right? And those guys are my idols. Like, and that whole movement, the Ferris movement, to me, Billy Al Bankston, Ed Keyholtz, Jasper Johns, all of them, Dennis Hopper, Ed Moses is like my all-time hero. But like, there's so much in my work. If you look at it, it's just continuing that fucking dialogue, bro. And it's like, I'm a Southern California artist, and it's like car and surf culture stuff has to be prevalent in my work, and then graffiti has to be prevalent in my work. And then how far can we push it? Light and space, assemblage, the sharks. It's just whatever. But it's all the Ferris Gallery. If you look at it, I always tell my crew, we're the Ferris Gallery. We're those dudes that, if you look at Andy Warhol's Campbell Soup Can show, that was on La Cienega Boulevard at the Ferris Gallery in LA. And that's super important, man, because New York was just like such a force in art, and we were not. As far as LA is concerned. And the fact that he came here to do the show was important. And I kind of relate that to the Seventh Letter Gallery and, you know, how Nazem coming here to do their show here. And a ton of people, like how important LA was. And they're from Venice Beach, and there were these beatniks and derelicts, and we're from Venice Beach, and we're beatniks and derelicts, and everything is exactly the same. But the dialogue, let's not forget the dialogue. Let's push the dialogue forward, and that's what it's all about. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't know.
You know, that beyond answers my question and gives us really great insight into your thinking, because I relate to those philosophies about, you know, inheriting culture and remixing it, you know, in honor and also out of curiosity. And that's what, again, you're not trying to emulate, so to speak, you know, anyone's work, but you're building on these ideas that artists before us were trying to wrestle with as well. Interestingly enough, with the color field paintings, I had found this, if you haven't heard of this building, this light field building that Milton Glaser did in the 1970s. It's really cool because it speaks to some of the things that you've been exploring in a very different way, but along, again, with that same school of artists that you mentioned. But also, you know what, you associate yourself with, you know, another school, the true old school. You know, you have a great studio mate. You got Scene in the house with you all the time.
Yeah.
How's that work for you? How's that relationship been?
You know, when I was a kid and competitive, you know, our egos won't let us give it up, right? So I was always like, I can burn Scene. We ran into each other. I never wanted to be his friend. And then you get to a point where, like, oh man, you realize like there couldn't be you without those people. You know, like I said earlier, K2S and WC had this huge rivalry, and they're so important in my career and whatever. So long story short, when I finally got to meet Scene years later on a different mindset, actually, I think I still didn't want to sit down with him. I think Roger Gassman had a meeting. We were doing something for Dennis Hopper, and we sat across from each other. We started talking, and dude was just like a kindred spirit. I'm like, dude, you got motorcycles? I got motorcycles. Like, it just worked out, and we became like brothers. And so we just clicked, and I went out going to Paris and hanging out with him, and Vegas, and he came here in LA, hung out with me, and he wound up like buying a house next door to me. And he recently got married and took off and doing his own thing, but he still has a studio here and he's working. It's great because, man, when you can work next to someone that was like your idol and then find out that he has mutual respect for you, it's fucking an amazing thing. And when you think you know everything about something and you don't, it's just such a humbling, great experience when he goes, oh, do it like this. I'm like, what? And it's just it's a good experience, man. He's incredible. It's great. Like I said, the dialogue between artists, man, I love that shit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I saw you guys both on your Instagram feed live in the studio working, and it was nice. You know, it was nice to see you guys, you know, in OG style, holding it down and having a good time in the studio. Because
we still talk.
Yeah, I'm sure you talk shit about each other, which is great. And he's always trying to sun you, you know, that's Richie, like he did with Duster.
Yeah.
And so, but what's nice about it, it really shows the camaraderie and the collaborative nature of writers. You know, this is historical. And I know, you know, it's just like Crash and Days have shared a studio for a long time, you know. You get examples like that, which are really quite interesting. And for you, actually, it's been good to have that energy because it's yielding great results in your work. You've been experimenting a lot with neon and found objects like this piece that we have here with the a collage about, I don't know, is it, you know, no parking signs and, you know, this neon and.
Well, that's a symbol. That's Edward Keelts, man. He took things and, you know, multiplied them and used them as assemblage. That's what it is. That's the epitome of Paris Gallery shit right there.
And so when you're doing these things, is it for you, again, is there, what you see is what you get, or is there a message, you know, behind the construction?
Always a message, man. The message is probably bigger than the painting. Sometimes my shit's aesthetically pleasing, and that's great. And sometimes it's not, but it's the concept to me. You know, I think as artists, my goal is like, I want to achieve a great concept and a great finished looking piece. I'll tell you, usually the concept's there and the piece takes a long time to really get there. Sometimes, you know, I don't like aesthetically the piece, but I love the concept. So I don't believe that there's a way to do art without a concept or a story or dialogue. So, yeah, I like to evoke emotion with color, but if it's not a theory behind it, have a computer do it. I don't know, you know.
But the other thing too about these assemblages, you know, they're really they fall into kind of the Americana experience, right?
Yeah.
The great American art experience, and then of course you're throwing another layer, which is that graffiti pop art history on top of it.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm an Americana kind of dude, right? You know, I came from New Orleans, um, born and raised, salt of the earth people, and a rough background, and just, I mean, kind of that dude, you know. I
So
expanded my horizon.
Kelly, when did you move to LA?
I didn't move to LA. I moved to Lake Tahoe, and so I stole a motorcycle when I was a kid. My mom was a teacher. My parents were divorced. My dad's out here running drugs and doing whatever he's doing. And I stole a motorcycle, and the truant officer would try to arrest me, and I'd take off on the motorcycle and start stealing bikes and getting in all kind of trouble. So my mom goes, "Let's go visit your dad." So we land in Reno to go to Lake Tahoe, and she goes, and I saw snow for the first time. I was like, "Oh shit!" And she goes, "You like that?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Good, because you're staying here." And I was like, "What the fuck?" And my dad just kind of like kicked my ass into shape, but he was like he wasn't around, but he was a great dad as far as like pushing my education, but he wasn't, you know, he's doing what he's doing. He's not around. So I went to Lake Tahoe first, and then I went to, I don't know, somewhere else in Lake Tahoe, then Palos Verdes, Manhattan Beach, all around LA, you know.
So that's everything that's influencing this Americana experience in your work. And one of the things that's really cool, it's interesting in these signs, the signages, and how graphic they are. If you like graphic design, you'll love these assemblages. Tell me about these assembly pieces.
Yeah, so you know, you nailed it. It's Americana, it's pop stuff. It's like it's creating patterns with signs. It's you know, they started out with my metallic tissue, which is my DNA as an artist on society, and I took the spray cans, every spray can I use for a museum or a train or whatever, and cut it up and use it. It's my metallic tissue, my DNA, and I love that. And I started getting back to the old history of like hitting metal tour with Power, Dream, Charlie, all these dudes, and we went to Frisco and like hit everything metal, and we hit Elvis's limo. Sorry, Elvis, but I regret that to this day. We didn't know it was his limo. We hit Elvis's limo. Anything metal was up for grabs, and so hitting metal tour brought me this shit and the DNA thing, and then I started adding other metal objects like license plates and signs. And license plates to me mean one love, you know, because every license plate is different, but we're all the same. So as humans, we're different colors, races, creeds, whatever, but we're just a human. And license plates are different colors, whatever, just license plate. So I kind of mix all that together, and that's what those pieces are.
It's a powerful statement. I mean, again, it's, you know, one of those things too that people should know is that, again, you do the same thing, you construct it, but also you're throwing up graffiti, a graffiti wall style piece on top. This one is a nice one. I like this one a lot. The red just pops with the wrist coming out in black filling with the white outline.
So that piece is like, you know, I'll go through the studio and take a bunch of junk canvases I don't like and put them on the wall and just paint over them. And just, you know, I love this piece because to me, it's a normal graffiti piece. It's not something I typically want to show in a gallery setting, but it's important because the history of all those pieces underneath, I could tell you every one was. Like, one was the first license plate piece I ever did. One was my daughter's canvas. One was this. So I know the history, so it's like layers, right? So, again, there's meaning there, but to the eye, it's just a graffiti piece.
One of the pieces I want to explore with you, Risky, is a really powerful piece, The Shark. You debuted it at Beyond the Street. It's an amazing accomplishment. It's so much detail and labor went into this sculpture of this great white shark. Actually, so tell me about the concept and why a shark in the first place.
Well, okay, we got to back up when we talk about that because the concept comes from, you know, Damien Hirst is one of my idols. I love his work. I love everything he's done. I love he redefining art and claiming your own, making your own stake in the world and claiming your price. And everything he does, I love. But at Beyond the Streets, the whole thing is beyond the streets, right? What are you going to take graffiti to this? So I started thinking about people like that. And I started thinking about Damien Hirst. So the shark, my answer to his shark, continuing the dialogue, was me cutting a cop car in half. Because that's the original shark. You know, that's the guy out there chumming the streets, getting all these rats to fucking rat on people. And he's a real predator. If you ask someone, Damien Hirst said the great white shark is the world's biggest predator. And I said, well, if you ask someone from the hood, they're going to say it's a cop. So I looked at his natural history series and he cut the cows in half and stuff like that. So I kind of did a hybrid of the shark and that, and I cut the cop car in half. And that was my statement as the first shark series. But I still thought the shark was so powerful I had to come back to it. But the first shark series is the cop car in half. And it comes from Damien Hirst. And then after that, I applied Edward Keel's an assemblage. And I made this shark that you see right now with all the stuff.
And how did you decide on what objects to use? Or was it fair game, whatever was metal?
They're all found objects and they're all my objects. So, you know, we could talk about, you know, I've been shot and stabbed and we could talk about, I don't know what we could talk about, but every object on there has a lot of meaning to me. So you figure that one out. But that's where it comes from, man. So I have a shed here. We can't see it, but it's like full of a lifelong of just collecting shit. Nuts, bolts, locks, whatever. So everything I pull out is shit that I have, that I collected. And like I said, it has to have a meaning. So that's what it was. And that piece, you know, the first time you saw a piece for, you know, almost a lot of money, you're like, it's so crazy, man, because your dream is to sell a piece for $500,000, and when it happens, you don't want to let it go. You know,
Right.
It's the weirdest fucking thing in the world.
Did this piece, was this purchased?
Yeah, that was sold. That's gone. The Hero Hotel bought it. It's in the Hamptons right now. It was a substantial piece for me, and it's a great. Yeah, so it's gone. Like, and I'm the guy that wants everything, man. Like, I'm the guy that the best thing to do is buy my shit because I'll probably come buy it back from you, and that's what happens. Yeah.
How are you coping with the demands of your success and the art market, especially at a time when the art market itself is quarantined?
You know, COVID has been, and it's a terrible thing. I'm not glorifying it. It's been the best thing ever happened to me, man, because much needed studio time and much needed break. Because you get on the road and you just go do these mural to mural, and you're making tons of money, and you're kind of going through the motions, right? So you start doing so many murals, like you're not really expanding. You're just expanding your catalog, but the work's not really expanding. And COVID has locked me in the studio. I painted my nuts last night. I did some ball paintings, whatever. You start doing all kind of crazy shit, and I got some really great work coming out. And COVID's been pretty good to me. I don't know.
Now, and in terms of and again, looking forward, what do you post COVID, post studio? You know, because one of the things that's interesting, your work is again. Focus on this idea of America and American icons and American might and things like that. And now we're in an age where it's being redefined. You know, what is Americana, right? And I wonder how that's going to look in art, right? And we've been on that tip for a long time. This kind of illustrates something very interesting and that I like. To bomb, right? Conceptually, to bomb. And yet, you know, the spray can, that's clearly an American innovation.
Yeah. Well, that right there is like, all my artwork's about the juxtaposition of things, right? Yin and yang, positive, negative. Like, I don't believe there's a positive without negative. I don't think there's pretty without ugly, whatever. So that's what that is. You know, you just said it, bomb, spray can bombs. I did gun, spray gun. You know, you have to understand, like, when my mom was running around and struggling with raising me, I had Hell's Angels raising me down the street. So, you know, I was going to rock concerts, taking illicit drugs when I was fucking a wee kid. And you just kind of get, like, Americana gets embedded in you, and then you progress to a point when I have 4 daughters, and I'm in a celebratory stage of my life, I guess, when my art's like very bright, and everyone's like, "Why? What? It's butterflies." I'm like, because I'm so fucking happy to be here. I'm so fucking happy to be able to raise my daughters in an incredible place and incredible schools and do all these great things. And I'm so blessed that I fucking got out of a closed-minded shell that I was in this place, and I can make a difference in the world and fight for equality and stuff like that. So yeah, man, Americana is a great thing. It's a really great thing if you could actually like make a difference and actually do something positive and be a positive role model for your kids. My dad wasn't a positive role model for me, but he tried to do the right thing, you know?
Yeah, but it seems, again, it's all, the dividends are fantastic because you've become a prolific artist, just on account of, a direction he had inadvertently pushed you to, revealed something that is so important to the world right now, is that you've got this illustrious life as an artist. And you travel, you have an impact on so many people, and young people as well, and your peers. As we wind this down, folks, I want to encourage you to ask Risk some questions in our last 10 minutes. Risk, one of the things that was really great was when I saw you in LA, and we were able to say, hey, with Alan and Allison, here's the Museum of Graffiti. Welcome. Like, what do you think? Part of the, for us, part of the goal and the criteria was that our peers would walk in and feel that we've arrived, not just us, but just us as a culture.
Well, I think you accomplished that, because that place was amazing.
Yeah, you came, and it was dope because you did you signed your prints. You did a dope print edition for us as well, which I really liked a lot. And one of the things that I think people ought to recognize in this story was that you are part of the backbone of LA graffiti history, and it was so important for us to kind of share that and let people know your story, and tell your story. But by the way, you left it all throughout Wynwood with all your murals as well, so you smashed it big time.
Good times. No, I think what you guys did there at the museum is great, because we had to be on the streets, we had all these shows, taking it to where is it now, where did it go? But we needed someone to document the history, and I think you guys did that fucking perfect. So that place is really special. I think everyone knows it's special, and yeah, anything I could ever do to be part of that, I'm just blessed and honored.
You already are, by showing up with me, and also with the print. We have your print still available. So, anything, for us, I think we want to be champions of the culture, but also for sure a champion of living artists. I think that's important. I think you and I really can relate on, having dialogue with history artists, even outside of our genre,
And that right there, we know each other from back in the day when you lived down the street from me here in LA. And, the tribal days, all that stuff. And Ket brought me to pay 90% of my training. So, talk about history. We are a family, right? Graffiti artists as a whole are a family, and I think that's what makes it so strong. And that's why it's undeniable, and that's why it is the next art form, and that's why it's here to stay. Is because it has such roots.
Not So Snap asks, any stories about heavens?
Yeah, tons. Which one? I mean, all right, I'll tell you the first.
The time you almost fell off, perhaps. I don't know.
Okay,
it must be really dangerous.
That's the first one. So the first one was on the 110 freeway, and it was a train overpass. And I shimmied out on the thing, and it had some rotten wood underneath it and a cable. And Rival, rest in peace, was there, and Miner was there, and the wood started breaking and falling. I caught myself, not a big deal. I was strong, and I wasn't worried about that. But I was like, fuck, this is how I'm going out. I'm going to jail for killing somebody because I did a heaven. Because the boards are falling into the freeway. I'm just like, thank God that wood didn't go through a windshield and kill somebody, because I was like, I thought for sure the headlines gonna be like, graffiti artist goes to jail for killing somebody. Yeah. Yep.
Another question for you coming in from Al's Matthews. How important was Soon One? How important was Soon to your earliest development in graph?
Soon was super important. He turned out to be a real fucking dick, but he's super fucking important because he was so much better than all of us, and he showed us all another way and how it is possible. Like, we didn't know graffiti could look so good until we saw Soon's. So he was super important in LA. I wish he progressed. I wish he wasn't such a dick, but he's fucking an incredible piece of LA history, and he was fucking amazing.
Yeah. Pure Genius asks, any advice to the younger generation?
Yeah, I said this since day one. Like, never let anyone tell you no, or just always go with your gut feeling. And when you doubt yourself, go 10 times harder.
True that. That's great advice to live by. What was the inspiration for this print? Asked Allison for this Rust-Oleum.
So I look at people like Andy Warhol and his Campbell soup can. That's pop art at its best. I wanted my image, right? And it wasn't gonna be a Campbell soup can. It's gonna be a spray can. So I took Rust-Oleum and put the Rust-Oleum, and that's my like iconic pop image. It's almost like my logo. I have another one that called What the Fuck, which is it's like a question mark, lightning bolt, exclamation point. And that's like goes back to Elvis taking care of business, and I adapted that. So yeah, it's just things that we adapt, and people go, dude, can you do anything else? I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, I can do a lot of other things, but that's my little icon or logo.
But how do you feel about like somebody like Brainwash completely milking it and co-opting it? And you know, I don't know, Guy. I don't, you know, whatever it is, what it is.
I know Terry. He's a nice guy. He's a great guy. I'm not mad at him. He takes it all the way to the bank, and good for him. You know, I have a colorful Brainwash story. We're going to battle and do this show, and we couldn't agree to terms because he wanted to come in after me, and I was like, fuck that. But, you know, Andy Warhol or Keith Haring, Andy Warhol said, art is what you can get away with. And so Brainwash is the epitome of that, and good for him. So I'm not mad at Brainwash, you know.
Well, he's not the only one in the culture. It's so pervasive. It's so iconic to all of us. Right. It's goes without saying.
Yes.
Let me look for another conversation. Over the years, how was the WCA versus K2S battle?
Legendary battle, one of the biggest battles I think in the world for graffiti at the time. It spawned Slick and Hex battling on TV, but because the WCA and K2S battle had so much hype and generation and energy, and you know, they're my boys, and they're probably getting mad at me. We smoked them at the battle, and our shit got dissed, and the next day we fixed it. So I think we still wound up winning, but like, to be fair, because I gotta be fair, you know, we showed up like 20 or 30 dudes, and they had like 2 or 3.
Wow.
But like, I'm exaggerating. I don't know how many they had, but like, I know that Prime, Def, I know Prime has some legendary history-changing pieces, because Prime's piece is probably one of the most important pieces in LA history for changing that whole East Side style. And Deffer and Prime, they all had this blocky style, and it went so out of the norm that people were like, what the fuck? And it threw people off. So we won the battle, but I don't think we won the war really there, because their piece, I think, was more important to LA history than ours. Mm-hmm. We just won the battle, but I think they did more important pieces to LA history that probably no one's really seen, but they should see them because they're great.
I'll give you another question. This may be of humor, inside humor. Intoxicants asks, my question is, do you still have the shrimp boots?
Fuck yeah.
There it is. There's a story behind that. Okay, here's if you were bombing LA right now, what would you be painting? a little construction.
Yeah, we're always under construction here.
Listen, Risky, we have 3 minutes remaining, and man, what a treat, man, to go. I've known you for quite some time, and to kind of survey you as a developing artist, as a growing man, and a family man, and being able to create this kind of success for yourself, this unlikely success, right? Who would have thought graph culture, hip hop culture would be what it is right now?
You know, it's funny. I just want to say one thing. Like, people always said along the way, would you ever imagine yourself being in galleries, museums? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I dedicated my life to this, so I always thought that, but I didn't expect this. You know, like, you know, all the shit that when it actually happens, I didn't expect it. But like, I think we dedicated our life to this thing, all of us, and I think it's great that all of us should live a decent life.
Well, that's it. That's a good note for us to close on, brother. I want to wish you well through all of this. You and your family, take good care, as always, and we'll check on you on your Instagram and live feed.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks again, brother. Thank you.
See you.
So, folks, again, really happy to